First, I thank both of you for giving this worthful session. And then one more thing I wanted to say, that the input, whatever you have given, I'll take and I'll try to implement in life. But to what extent, I don't know, but I'll try to implement it. And one thing I wanted to ask you, sir, that ego. So I want to give some little explanation about ego.
Whenever we talk of ego and we say we have to shed ego, I also want to present that there are two components to ego. I remember we discussed this at one of our Hamsa retreats. I would mention, all of us feel cholesterol is bad. But it's not so. There is good cholesterol, there is bad cholesterol. You have to increase the good cholesterol component. You have to reduce the bad cholesterol component. So now it's not that all cholesterol is bad. Ego is a very important component, and there is a positive part of ego which then shapes the will and determination, which Mr. Venkatraman was saying yesterday. The will and the determination, which is so close to the spirit, which is what gives you that energy to act, to do. So there is a very positive component in the ego, and I would agree with you that it is not that all ego. I agree with you. So there is a positive component in the ego which is directed by the will and the determination, and that is the one which is making you do. There is a negative component in the ego, and that is the side which we are saying that we need to reject.
I should add by saying ego is nothing but I as the center. Let's be very clear. I as a center. Our whole personality is built with I as a center. In other words, ego as a center. Now, the mind is our instrument through which we manifest our ego. The mind is full of thoughts and emotions. So through thoughts and emotions, we manifest our ego. We manifest our I-ness, if we so say so. In fact, that's the way we manifest our personality, rightly or wrongly, consciously or unconsciously. Now, it's an evolutionary development, as I was explaining over a period of time. You developed your capacity to become aware of yourself. One, to identify yourself as a unique person, as a person different from A, B, C, D, etc. And two, to stand on your own legs. And three, to survive, to grow. All this is part and parcel of your of what is built into your ego, which is personality, which is there. There's no doubt about that. Now, therefore, the proper ego development, the word proper ego development is a very essential constituent of your psychological development. If there is no proper ego development, right from our childhood, right from our even womb, right from our adolescence, etc., if there is no proper development of the ego, all things can go chaotic, can go awry. So for that person is concerned. Most parents don't understand that. They try to impose their ego. And it's difficult for the child, adolescent, to emulate the parents all the time. And so they are in confusion. They get into chaotic situation on their own. So proper, healthy development of the ego is a very important situation. Now, a schizophrenic patient, for example, a patient with some mental situation, is a patient without a proper development of the ego. In an extreme case, his ego has collapsed. He goes into depression. He goes into manic depression. He goes into mania, etc. His ego has actually collapsed. The task of the psychotherapist in that case is to ensure that his ego comes back. He must be aware where his self-esteem will be very low. And he will just not do anything. His self-esteem must be built up. His self-confidence must be built up. which are the ways by which the ego learns to stand up. And so it does. And he does it by trying to eschew those factors which were negative, which oppressed the child, oppressed the person in his childhood or adolescent, whatever it was, which was responsible for this collapse. Now, therefore, a good ego, a sound ego, is good to face the world, to face issues, to face society. It's good. What happens is that all the situations that we were discussing yesterday, see, the ego can go at a tangent. When I become the center, I can become overconfident. This ego becomes overconfident. Ego thinks it's the center of the world. Everybody else has to answer to it. Everybody is subservient to it. Otherwise, I can get raw, I can get angry, I can get upset. Everything must come to me. It begins to build up an extreme degree of selfishness. Now, once it begins to do that, then ego is on the wrong track. And when it goes on that track, then it will muster all the powers that it has in its own mind, all the emotions, all the old thoughts, all those ones which have accumulated over a period of time, both as an adult, etc. It will bring them back and color them. And then you see the ego becomes sullied. The ego goes off the track. That ego becomes what do you call asocial. It does not help anybody. It does not even help itself. But it helps itself the wrong way. And it cannot understand people. It only can understand itself. And therefore there is no love. It can only be hatred. You see, this is the kind of situation into which it can let itself. So we have to take care to ensure that it does not stay into that kind of a thing. Yes, there's a very, very thin wedge between a good ego and a bad ego. One has to be all the time alert. That is the first lesson in spirituality. The first lesson. One little achievement I have done, my head can go off. And there is no end thereafter. You see? That's what happens. So one has to be careful. That's why it's the thin end of the wedge. So we're going to be ensuring that we do not stray onto the other side. Right? I made sense. Okay, thank you.